Hey, welcoming back to Nailing the Apex, Mr. Gavin Ward, which is it's great. You get a round of applause when you show up here, Gavin.
We got the royal wave.
Before we, yes, of course, yes. And of course, before we get started here, Gavin, got to put this one
represent
in honor of last weekend.
Nice.
Pretty good time for the Formula One team, and pretty interesting time for your team, because I know Tim has some questions. We kind of got to break this down. Tim, I'm going to let you take this, because this is, I think everybody's dying to know.
Adam is a huge, obviously, McLaren fan. So
yes,
let's get the Lando Norris stuff, Adam, out of the way.
Okay.
And then we'll dive into some IndyCar.
Well, okay, and then we're going to have to get some Leafs at the end here, Gavin, because I know you were watching.
Start with Leafs. You can start with Leafs. I know Gavin and Adam are huge Leafs fans, so you can always start there.
With the straight misery,
Yeah. You want to start with that? So, Gavin, here's my question. You run a team. If your team is not performing, what will McLaren head office say to you?
I think that's a great question. Generally pretty well supported.
Yes, of course.
I think it's very easy to be a Monday morning quarterback in racing and say, if you'd done that, you would have won. And we don't get a lot of that, which is great. I had more of that in previous roles and experiences. But at the end of the day, the ambition to perform is high. I think one of the things that's a real challenge is the mentality that I think performs best is one that isn't so attached to the results. You have to be focused on getting better. And you have to be almost like something goes wrong. And it's like, right, next lap, we are where we are. We go from here. Like, you got to hit reset really fast. We had a terrible weekend in Barber as a team. That was our last race, and just had a lot of things go wrong, some out of our control, some within our control. And what do? Do you beat everybody up? No, everybody's here because they want to perform. Actually, it's a time to go pull a tear off and move on to the next one and, learn from it, right? Mm-hmm. Rather than bag on people, play the blame game.
Okay. All right. So, listen, that's been going around a lot in Toronto with Leaf fans after this first round exit, which is why I'm asking you. Because, it's not one bad weekend. It's 8 years, one playoff victory.
I think there's something there that to be looked at. Yeah. I was talking to I've been doing this for a year. I've been doing this for a year, and okay, I think we're on a 5-year plan. I think when you're 10 years or 8 years into the plan and the strategy doesn't work, you got to have a hard look at the strategy. And
right.
The core four that doesn't score is in the postseason. They score a lot in the regular season, but that structure doesn't seem to be working.
Okay.
Wait. So what?
The other thing, I'm a goalie, so
we'll
play goal. Leafs, I'm available. Not currently hurt. Probably would get hurt. But it seems like they don't want to spend any money on goalies. But in the grand scheme of things, I think they could pay me pretty well. So, I think need good goaltending to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So what's
the brilliant coach? I'm ready.
What do you do here then? What do you do? Adam and I were discussing this on the last podcast of what do you do with the entire team? You get rid of the coach, you get rid of the GM, you get rid of a few players, you trade some players, you get better on defense.
You got to dig in and understand whether the people have the desire, the vision, I think, to go from here. What's your strategy? Where's your data? What's your analytics? What's your strategy? And how do you roadmap from here to there? Because if there's no plan and people are just covering their butts and kind of making it up, then it's probably time to make a change. I think that's the tricky bit. Deciding whether someone's coachable or not, deciding whether they're the right person or not.
When you talk about level of intensity, and I know, listen, there's not a lot of comparisons drawn between hockey and motor racing, but I do think at least in the driver's perspective, motor racing drivers generally are people that live on the edge. You have to be right on the edge of essentially, oblivion, losing the car to get the most out of it. Hockey players have to live right on the edge of safety in the same way. Maybe you're not spinning out a car, but your body is physically put on the line every single day. It's vulnerable, and you got to play on that edge a little bit. How do you know, Gavin, when you talk to a prospective driver, how do you know if they've got that level? How do you know if they've got, forgive the term, but they got that extra gear where there's that edge to them that they're going to push, and in the hard moments, they're going to be the one that stays the course rather than pulling out of a corner early or something like that?
I mean, it's a great topic, and one that I'm actually reading a book right now that's by a professor at University of Toronto, funnily enough, who has written a book called The Tyranny of Talent. And it's all about talent identification, the concept of talent, what it is to label someone talented. And the interesting thing from that, like he's done a lifetime of research on the topic, is that humans are really bad at it. Like, we're really bad at spotting talent. And I think the perfect case study for that is pro sports drafts, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think they looked at the NBA draft and thought the success rate there was something, and it was like one of the better examples of talent identification. And they were like 19%, was like the success rate of picking players that were going to have a meaningful career. And it's like, once you realize that it's really hard to do and people are really bad at it, does that change the way you look at it a little bit? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it does.
I think that's I don't have the answer for that. That's actually something we're trying to develop. We're trying to develop I always think you want to systemize where possible. And then you kind of own your systems and you can tune them. And they start out simple and they kind of keep them as simple as possible that gets you generally in the right place. So, yeah, we do the old character reference when you talk to somebody, but like, has somebody actually faced adversity at that point? Some of these kids that are coming up into racing, they may have never really had a big setback and had to dig deep. And then that's the moment when, I listened to a sports science podcast, and it was a guy who was a mental skills coach, sports psychologist. He worked with the Navy SEALs, and he also then worked with the Toronto Blue Jays and a couple other MLB teams. And he's basically said, like, he created a protocol for mental skills for Navy SEALs. Basically, when you bring people into training, also not just to evaluate who was going to succeed, but also how to develop them. And his whole thing was like, if somebody came in and they're 24 years old and they've never seen adversity in their life, good luck to you. You're not going to get through the training camp. Like, you actually needed somebody. The tricky bit is that people need to have had to have some fight, And I think about Sebastian Vettel, who's one of the best drivers I ever worked with when he was at his prime. He didn't have a ton of money, and his dad basically could afford for him to do 1 year of racing in Formula Renault, which is like the first step out of karts into cars. And it's like 1 year. If I crash the car, I don't have money to fix it. Tim will understand being in that situation. Because we talked about this the other day.
Yep.
And if I said this before, shut me up. But like, he said that was the most stressful time of his entire career, because it's like he had to nail it on performance. If he crashed the car, he didn't have any money. Like, this was do or die for his entire career. And he managed to get picked up by Red Bull in the junior program, and the rest is history. But I think having that is actually partly what makes somebody great, like the difficult times. So that's an interesting one.
Okay. When you take a look at I guess your driver lineup right now, Gavin, I mean, you've got the 2 seats that are already filled, and that third seat, I guess at the moment you're evaluating. I mean, you've had Callum Ilott in it, you've had Teo Porcher, and it sucks that David Malukas won't be back. But when we take a look at evaluating that driver for that third seat, like what is the process that you have to go through to pick the right candidate for it?
Yeah, no, it's super interesting in motorsports, because you've got all these different feeder series, right? Mm-hmm. Do you want someone who's done Formula 2? Do you want someone who's done Super Formula in Japan? Do you want someone who's done Indy Next over here? There's all different coming down from F1. There's a lot of different talent pools you can pull people from for the IndyCar world. And obviously, we're in an odd time of year to be recruiting. Mm-hmm. But the current system over in Europe, where F2 champs can't run again, and they rarely get an F1 seat, means you've got some really talented prospects that are kind of sitting on the sidelines. So that's the pool that Teo came out of, F2 champ. Mm-hmm. And I mean, right away, the kid's got a great attitude. He is super positive, super keen, very professional. We dropped him in the deep end to go race in Long Beach. And
you definitely did.
Again, when it comes to that attitude, like who's going to perform, I think some of it is the environment you create, right? And that's another thing that makes it hard to judge people. It's like, this guy was a prick at this team, but that team's a nightmare. If he comes here, if we bring him in and we introduce him the right way, we give him the right support, he could be a totally different individual. Positivity is contagious. Negativity is contagious. If you're in a toxic environment, you don't behave the same. So trying to bring somebody in and this is how we want to work. This is our objectives. And for Teo, every session, this is what I want you to focus on. Let's be realistic. Let's build up to it. Let's get all the learning done. Let's complete as many laps as possible. Focus on this one corner, try and make it bite-sized sort of progression. I think that worked reasonably well with him. It's just this is such a tough series. People don't realize it. Being a rookie in IndyCar is hard.
Oh, yeah.
It is.
For sure.
So you're changing your body, you're changing your mindset. There's so much about it that even just
feel.
The feel of the car and no power steering, just that.
Oh yeah, that's the other thing is I talk about this all the time. When you see a guy come out of F1, they got a neck like a rugby player and tiny little arms, right? Because they're light, but they got their neck muscles are so strong for the G forces. Well, our G forces are strong, but they're not the same. So you don't need your neck doesn't need to be quite as strong. But if you look at the top IndyCar drivers, check this bit out. Freaking ripped. And you don't see that in F1 driver. It's just the weight of the wheel is such a big deal. So you can look at a guy who's not done IndyCar and be like, you're gonna have to get to the gym. To put on some weight. We're gonna need to. And yeah, so I think Barber, which is one of our faster big commitment tracks, was oh shit, how do you hang on the wheel? The fastest corner is the harder it is. And that was definitely a thing. It would be. It was never going to be fun, but you got to go through it. The good thing is we've got our own trainer here who works with the drivers. We use a company called Hints of Performance, which supplies a lot of the trainers up over in Europe. We are the first and only North American motorsport team to do a collaboration with them. We got a full-time
that's cool
performance coach who runs training in our own gym for mechanics, drivers. It's a Finnish company by its roots. It's a holistic overall view of human performance. So it's sleep, it's nutrition, it's hydration, it's strength and conditioning, recovery, mental skills coaching. So we try and create that. It's all the stuff that to be a great race car driver, probably to be a great performer in anything, you've got to have your inner circle buttoned up, your support network. And that support network needs to be, if there's disruption there, performance suffers. So we try and as a team is let's not leave it to chance. Let's make sure we're getting the easy stuff, that you're eating your meal at the right time. You're getting the right sort of meals. You're getting the right hydration. We're doing the sweat test. We'll put the sports science to it so that we get the low hanging fruit there. Get off. The other thing is we work as a group, engineers and drivers together with mental skills coaches, and try and understand personality types, what a driver needs in the form of communication, what the strengths and weaknesses of the interaction of the group, how to better interact, and just mindset. Honestly, it comes back to that mindset. It's trying to be a performance culture that that doesn't get burnt out, that can be resilient. It's a never-ending process, just trying to be better.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
Just wanted to jump back to Teo for a second because, like, I remember talking to him before going into Long Beach, and he had only done like a few hours in the sim before you threw him into a real IndyCar into a race weekend. What did you guys see? Oh my God, man! You guys really threw him into the deep end. But holy cow, what did you see from just the simulator session that he did? Because I know he didn't get to do much, but like just from that one session,
kid knows how to drive a simulator. That's for sure. Yeah. And some of these young guys, simulators aren't the real thing, but he was 5 laps and the kid's up to speed. You're like, okay, I feel pretty good about it.
All right.
Yeah, that was like, wow, that's impressive. So he didn't mess around on there. Yeah, I think the real thing's always a little different.
Yeah.
And I think, I've seen there are teams that evaluate their race drivers based on how they perform in a DIL. And like, that's how they pick and choose talent. And like talent identification, right? We're talking about, I just think that is broken. Like it is so dumb. Unfortunately, I've worked with enough drivers and I've worked on enough sim rigs, some of the most advanced simulators in the world. And it's just not reality. The way it's done is just not. Is it useful? Yes. Is it? But like, I work with the best drivers in the world. Can't do shit all on a sim. And I work with some other drivers that are incredible on the sim, and just okay in reality. And I think one of the things there comes back to like my geeky hobby of sports science. But I've got a pretty ambitious dream for what I think simulators need to become. We haven't done it yet, but I'm working on it. I'll tell you more about it when I get there.
That's awesome.
So you can throw my way to help, but
yeah, we wouldn't want to give away any secrets to any other teams, too. Let's be honest.
No, exactly. This is the real deal. I got big ambitions, and it's very different than what's being done right now. I think we train drivers on simulators. It's like a batter on a batting cage. It ain't the thing.
No, it's no way. It's not even close. Not even close.
It's not the thing. The problem of nailing a qualifying lap in IndyCar, think about it. I'm a driver. I'm going into the session. I don't know the track conditions. Some other series has been running. I'm putting on stone cold, harder compound tires. I go out, I do a few laps. The track's improving. Grips nowhere when the tires are cold. They're coming in. I'm feeling every corner's different. Come back in, put on another softer set of tires, and I got one lap, and I got to freaking nail it. And if I miss it by half a tenth, I am out. Like, it's so competitive, and everything around you is changing. Gusts of wind, someone pulls dirt on the track, you're getting the track cleaned up, rubbered in. Like, it is not a constant environment. So what do you drive in? Do you drive to, like, memorize where I brake and how I turn and think about my hands and feet? No. Suck if you do that. It's got to be very intuitive. And I think when you drive a simulator, you live in this clinical world where everything is identical. And yeah, you might have tire models that mimic some of the warm-up effects, or maybe you have a stochastic random wind model, but like, even then it's like, I just don't think, and the pressure of it, right? Like, how do you mimic that pressure situation? How do you let people drive quiet mind, intuitively? There's so much to it that is so different than just driving around trying to beat your lap time in a simulator.
Like, even I remember, like, even when we went out, like, in Atlantic cars, and like we were on the Yokohamas, and then I believe, if I remember correctly, Champ Car was running I believe they were running the Goodyears, and you could just tell immediately the difference between the grip levels and just how much the track had changed because of the rubber that they had put down on the track compared to the rubber that you're now going to run. And it throws your entire thing right out the window. And you kind of have to adapt to that fast.
Yeah. If you want to scramble your brain a little bit, just try and like pick out some technical papers that try and model like rubber tire to road friction.
Yeah.
Because it is like, the science of that tribology, as it's called, is pretty wild, and you realize it's so complicated, and the best teams in the world still get caught out by it. Like the best F1 teams with all the tire science you can do, know more than the tire manufacturers about tires by a long way, and like, it's still difficult.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you start talking about like what's the working range, so the temperature range where the tire works at. Well, that's great, but that's also not just compound dependent. That's also dependent on how much rubber's on the track, because then that's an adhesion rather than a hysteretic grip, which is like interlocking kind of mechanical grip in the tarmac. And then you start talking about if it's a fresh tarmac, you've got like the tar, the bitumen in there, and that has a working temperature range.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so you're not even on a solid ground really, and that interaction changes with temperature. So like there's just so much to it, you can get lost on it. So I'm not saying we shouldn't try and better understand it, but it's like trying to I think simulators they're too constant.
Yeah, for sure.
And also I think you look at the way that why do kids that grow up in the favelas in Brazil kick ass at football, soccer, against the multi-million-dollar funded professional programs of Western Europe? And it's like drills and run around cones is not the way. Mini games, kicking a can around in a favela is better training for a football player than all this structured, overly repetitive work. So take a driver approach to some of the stuff. I think I don't know. That's my dream. I'm working on that. Anyways.
I like that. I like that. Now, I know we got you for a limited time, so I wouldn't have wanted to jump into this early, but I do want to know, the McLaren Formula One team wins their second race in 12 years. As a longtime McLaren fan, I was thrilled, I have to be honest, especially the day after the Leafs get eliminated. Tim and I were talking about that. It was a nice sort of, yay. Gavin, there's so many questions I would have, but given our time frame, A, how big is this for Lando Norris and his confidence? You being a guy who manages drivers all the time. B, how big is it for the factory that has worked for such a long time? You think about back to 2016, 2017 when the car had no sponsors. It was terrible. It wasn't going anywhere. Zach Brown comes in, starts the turnaround of McLaren. What do you think this boost gives to not only Lando but the factory team?
I mean, winning is a big boost, and especially winning on the day, not 45 days later, which is our situation. But anyways, there's a lot to be said for finding a bit of swagger.
Yeah,
I think, and that self-belief. It's not about being cocky, but it's about kind of just having that stance. It's like that. It's the goalie that walks in the locker room. People used to say this was Patrick Waugh. It's like as soon as he walked in the locker room, the whole team knew this guy's a badass, and he's going to be on it. And like that posture, that little bit of swagger, that little belief that you're going to get it done. You got to get it done to sort of build that. It's hard to fake, and I think it goes a long way. So that's the crew, it's the whole team. I saw that mentality shift at Red Bull when I was there. When I went from like 7th place to like, okay, now we're in the mix, and then you get that first win, and it's like, all right, here we go. There starts to be that really, it could get a lot of momentum. So I think there's a good opportunity here, but you know what? They've got to. It's so funny. Your ambitions just change. Like I remember when I was at Red Bull, we were 7th place teams. Man, I just want to get a podium. Like I don't want to work in F1 and like never been on the podium. Like we get that podium finish, and then I was like, I just want to like win a race. Like can we just win a race? Because like it's hard to do. And then we won that race in China, and I was like, man, I just want to win a championship. Like just be a championship. You win championship in 2010. It's like. 1-2 is the only thing that matter now. Like, it's not a 1-2 finish. Like your expectations just level up,
sure.
level up, and then like when that stops happening, it's like, oh no. But
yeah. Okay, so along the way there, though, I think did Sebastian Vettel not win a race ahead of the Red Bull senior team when he was with Toro Rosso?
He did.
How was that?
Well, that felt like crap.
Yeah.
All right.
I was livid. We were all livid because it was funny because we designed that car. Like,
right.
We developed that car, and they had a better motor than us frankly, they had a pretty shit hot driver.
Mm-hmm.
He was a stud for sure back in those days, and they beat us fair and square, but it was heartbreaking. And honestly, I thought we were good in the wet. That was a wet race. Our first 2 wins were wet races, and that car had this aerodynamic behavior where you put on wet tires and it picked up a ton of downforce. Like the tire shape is one of the most intricate and important parts of aero development. Understanding the weight that comes off the wheels and that shape and the tread profile, it changed the aero performance so much that it like lit the car up. It was just came alive in the wet, and we were on the front. We were like qualified, I think, second or something for that race with the Red Bull, and Vettel was on pole, if I recall. I could be wrong. This is a long time ago. Maybe my memory's faded, but we had the best wet starts, and the Ferrari wet starts sucked. I was a start guy back in this day. So it was 2008. We had like the best wet starts. I found a loophole in the rules to do with the engine control that like in the wet, you could drop the revs down and just crush people. We talked about it the other day when I was talking about Coulthard and losing my mind. But anyways, so I'm like, give me this wet start. We're going to crush those guys and we'll win the race. They started behind a safety car because it was too wet. And I was like, I freaking lost it. I was so pissed off. Like, I was screaming. Like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, So then they won, and they took all the credit, and they talked about how much smarter than us they were. That's like, that's our freaking race car, and you got a better motor. It's not. You pricks. But anyways, no, I love them, really. We're just a little jealous.
Yeah. No, you know what? Jealousy is a good motivator, I think, sometimes in competitive sports.
Being in the paddock after the race, Monza we were just so freaking bitter. Like, it brought it back, man. It's like I was there right now.
Man, I could feel it. It's coming through. Like
the nerve.
The whole shift in the conversation the last 5 minutes.
And then then we tested Vettel in our car, and it's like, okay, this kid is good.
Yeah, and really kicked off the Red Bull program, right? Like he was the first one to really graduate and be amazing.
Yeah, but that first year, Vettel was great. Weber was great. Weber is like awesome. He's just like, you want to talk about resilience.
Yeah,
Aussie grit, man. Yeah. He is
for sure.
Grit. And they that first couple years when Weber was crushing it in the high speed and Vettel was crushing it in the low speed, and like they had a great thing and they learned off each other, and it was like, that is the freaking way.
And they were best friends too.
Oh, they loved each other.
That's a topic for another episode.
Yes.
Topic for another episode. But I'll tell you this. You can have drivers that are friends until you have a dominant race car.
Yeah, then forget it.
And if they're close and they're fighting for the championship just between the two of them, good luck to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good luck. 100%. When you're in the back, everybody loves it. Whatever, who cares? When you got the car that's finishing 1-2 every weekend, unless you've got one guy who's just like way worse than the other, they can get along. But if you've got two guys there and it's whoever wins the championship, good luck to you. It's going to go bad.
100%.
Well, Gavin, listen, we know you have a hard out and you're already a few minutes past it. So we just, as always, I want to say thank you, man. Your insights are awesome. And it's nice to talk a little hockey with the motor racing too.
Absolutely. I mean, I take a lot of inspiration. There's the book. If anybody's really interested, there's a book called The Power Within by Justin Goldman and Mike Valley. They're two like goalie guys. So Mike Valley's he's an NHL goalie coach. Justin Goldman's done a lot of stuff with USA Hockey, and he's a legend for bringing people together. And I use those books, and I still keep in touch with Justin a lot. And they're so applicable to racing. Mm-hmm. It's all about the mental side. And I think goalies and race car drivers are remarkably similar. So it's fun to talk a bit of hockey because it's two of my passions.
Beautiful. Well, we can do that anytime. And what was the other book you referenced from the U of T professor? Just one more time.
That one's called The Tyranny of Talent.
Okay. Yeah. Might be picking that one up.
There's some good podcasts. You look at The Way of Champions with Joe Baker, I think his name is. And there's a podcast with him, and it talks all about that, and it is brilliant. And it's like, cool. Oh my God.
Okay.
Changes the way you think about a lot of things. So, yeah.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Thanks, man.
Gavin, thanks for your
Gavin,
time,
taking
buddy.
the time. Yeah, this was fun, dude.
Always.
Like
Always
always.
fun. Yeah. See you later.
All right.
Bud.
See you later.